being facilitated this morning by the Donegal Volunteer Centre. My name is Michael Kirk. I'm a trainer with the Carmichael. I've been with Carmichael for the past 5 or 6 years, and since the 1st of January this year, I've been working with Carmichael on the annual activity report as well as the whole area of governance. As we go through this, I am a great believer in you asking the questions as we go. I'll be taking a wee break. We'll come to that in the slides. So if you want to submit any questions as we go, that's fine with me. If when this presentation is completed later on today or indeed tomorrow, you have some further questions into your mind, by all means you can route them through John at the Donegal Volunteer Centre, or directly to me at michael@carmichael.ie, at carmichaelireland.ie. And I will do my utmost to have answers to you, written, of course, within a day or so. So let's move on. This presentation is addressed really to the small charities and voluntary organisations. And an annual report is about really telling your story and giving feedback on why an annual report in the first place. Then we will walk through the template in sections 1 to 3. We'll take a break depending on how time is going. And then we'll walk through sections 4 to 6. And we'll hopefully have lots of questions at that stage, and then I'll do a wrap up. Again, this workshop is being delivered free of charge thanks to the support from Community Foundation Ireland and Pobble. Again, the session outcomes. What is it we're trying to achieve here today? First of all, it's an understanding the purpose of an annual report and to describe the legal compliance requirements for an annual report. Review what should be in the annual report. Decide on the style of presentation and content. Now, each organisation has its own style and presentation. But the content is kind of consistent across all reports. Plan how to produce an effective annual report for your organisation. I'm often asked, when do you start planning for the annual report? And we're talking at this stage, the annual report for 2019. So the annual report really is about telling your story. And normally at this stage, if we were doing a live presentation up there in Donegal, we will be getting people to talk to each other about your organisation, what it does and how it operates, and then having somebody give feedback on what your organisation does, which was found to be most beneficial and very satisfactory by participants in other venues. So why an annual report? Well, first of all, it represents a real opportunity for small organisations in the not-for-profit sector to tell their story and showcase their transparency by outlining their performance, governance, culture, and financials. There are lots of small organisations in the sector, and they never get a chance to showcase their wonderful activity that they do, and this is an opportunity for them to do that. And I'm referencing there, I suppose, the Good Governance Awards, and we'll be coming to that later. How the report actually looks will be unique to you because it's your story. It's the story of your organisation for the previous, not just for the previous 12 months, but since its foundation right up to the present time, and of course where you're going into the future as well. It will contain some photos and testimonials from your trustees, who are your board of directors, your service users, and your volunteers. There are 6 sections contained in this. The core organisation information, a brief description then of your organisation, how you were governed, what you set out to achieve versus what you actually achieved, and how you explain the variances, the final income and expenditure, and plans in for the coming year and the future years ahead. In other words, where have you come from, where are you now, and where are you going, and how do you intend to get there? So let's look at section 1 then, about the, we'll call it the front or the cover page. Your organization, the legal name of your organization. And the legal name of your organization is contained in the memorandum and articles which your company will have registered with the company's registration office. And that's the legal name of your company, and that is the name that you use on your annual report. Again, the reporting period will be the year in question. We'll assume it's 2019, from the 1st of January to the 31st of December. And the organization address and the contact details. Now, your organization address is your registered address. So when you check your memorandum and articles, you might find that the address is slightly different. In particular, if your organization has moved premises, because every time you move premises, you clearly you change address, and those changes have to be registered with the company's registration office. So it might be an opportunity, it might be a time and an opportunity to review your memorandum and articles at that point. Again, quote your company number.
Hey, Michael, could I interrupt there for a second?
Sure, John, yeah.
We're not seeing a screen share. We're not seeing the presentation. Could you open it and hit screen share and then?
Oh, sorry. Just a moment. As far as it doesn't take.
Yeah, sorry. Apologies to.
No, it doesn't take. Sorry about that, John. Will I start again?
No, I think you were on slide 5 there. So I just pulled it up to see. So if you want to continue from there, or it's up to yourself now. If you want to start again, later on. But yeah, if you open the presentation and hit screen share, or I can share it for you if you'd prefer.
Maybe you can do it, John. Maybe you should do that, John. Yeah.
No problem. Well, you'll see the presentation now as well, and you can tell me to move it on as suits you.
Okay. I haven't seen this happen before. So I've lost control of the actual movement of the slides. Yeah.
Yeah, because it's me that's sharing them. So you're on. Are you happy enough with the slide that you're on at the moment? And then you can just say to me whenever you want the next slide.
Okay.
Or do you want to try sharing yourself?
Yeah, it should be sharing at this stage. I can't see where that has gone askew.
Everybody should see slide 5. It's my screen that you're sharing at the moment.
Okay.
So I can just click through the slides for you.
Well, okay. You go ahead, so John.
Yeah. So is that the slide you want to be on, just so we get started?
Let me see.
We've moved past that one, John.
Yeah, I think we're past that, John. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Sorry, I'm just, yeah. Go ahead, yeah. The next slide. Can you bring the next slide?
That's not sure.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh, yeah. Move it on to the next one. And the next one. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Okay, John. Thanks. Okay.
No bother. Thank you. Apologies for that.
Well, apologies. I just can't see how that has happened to me. But anyway, these things happen. And again, you quote your company, the company registration number. If you have the old CHY number from the Revenue Commissioners, by all means, quote that, and of course, quote your charity registration number. And a logo, if you have a logo, by all means, emblazon that on the front page or the cover page of your annual report. Can we take the next slide, John? Yeah, okay. The organization's purpose and activities. This is central, of course, to the organization's reasons for existence. Okay. The annual report is the key communication device to stakeholders, the beneficiaries, volunteers, staff funders, and supporters, and other interested parties, and should clearly set out the organization's purpose in accordance with your now referred to as your constitution, Previously, it was just a memorandum on articles. It's the same thing. And the key objectives, what you hope to achieve, and the main activities, what you do, and the activities that you undertake in relation to your purpose. So this is central to the organization's reason for existence. It's a key communication device. If I'm passing your building and I pop into your organization in the reception area, is there a copy of your annual report there from me? And if I pick it up and read it in my spare time, what is it telling me? Is it telling me your story? Is it giving me the details regarding your beneficiaries? Does it talk about your volunteers, how you manage your volunteers, how many you have, etc., and all that? And of course, it should also include the purposes as set out in your memorandum and articles. Usually on the first page, depending on how large your organisation is, it might take in part of the second page. But the aims and objectives, and the purpose of which you exist, should be clearly stated. Next slide, Tanya. The chairperson and the treasurer. Usually, the chairperson, will introduce the annual report, and at this stage, they should just give a brief introduction to it, without going into the detail of it. The overview in terms of the key successes, the achievements, and the challenges. What were the challenges that were encountered during the year, and how those challenges were overcome, and what was the learning from those challenges. Thank the funders, the supporters, the volunteers, the staff, and identify the challenges experienced during the year. Refer to the upcoming challenges, the risks that may be encountered in the year ahead, and may also outline the plans for the year ahead. So the chairperson will give a brief overview in relation to what's contained in the annual report, the challenges and the risks, and what the journey ahead might look like. Okay, no questions so far, no? We're doing well. So the treasurer then will give an insight into the income and expenditure, the types of fundraising undertaken, if you have taken fundraising, the types of fundraising that you have done, how the income received was used, and how it was applied. Again, thank the sponsors, the donors, the service providers, and acknowledge any goods received at a reduced cost, or indeed on a pro bono basis. A lot of people nowadays do a lot of excellent good work on a pro bono basis for various organizations at local level and charities. And again, the details of the finances, we will outline those in section 5. But again, the treasurer might make some reference at this point to the overall income for the year. Then section 3, the structure, the governance, and the management. Provide details of the organization's legal structure. For example, is it an unincorporated association, a company limited by guarantee, or a charity? And again, your memorandum and articles, or your governing instrument will clearly outline that. If it's a charity, just remember the charity regulator has produced 2 excellent documents, one a constitution for a company limited by guarantee, and also a constitution for an unincorporated association. The trustee, the board of directors, the committee members, list the names of each of the trustees, the board members, also specifying the office, the office holders, whether they're chairperson, treasurer, or secretary, so that they are clearly identified. Describe how people are elected or nominated to the board, and the term of office of board members, and the officers as set out in your constitution. Hello, yes? No. Somebody say something? You know.
Mhm.
Okay. The role of the board, of course, and the number of meetings held and the record of attendance of each board member. Just to go back there again, it is important that the list of all the board members are included in the annual report. There is sometimes a reluctance, and I found that myself, where people are saying, well, you know, do we have to list all these people? Yes, you do. If you're being funded by the public, out of the public purse, it's a good idea to include all the board directors, and as well as that, describe how they are elected or nominated to the board. Are they nominated at an annual general meeting from a membership? Is your organisation a membership based, or is it done through advertisement on your website, or activelink.ie, or board match, or how do you get people nominated on your board? And again, the role of the board and the number of meetings held and the record of attendance of each board member. In other words, there should be in there then a little matrix which would indicate, first of all, the number of meetings that you held, the directors, and then the number of meetings that they attended, because that would clearly demonstrate to all and sundry the commitment of each individual board member. If you're holding 9 meetings during the year and Michael Crick only choose to attend 3, well, you know, he's sending out a message that he's not very committed to your organisation. Did he attend 2 or 3 or 4 last year as well? So the performance of board members and their attendance at meetings is an indication, you know, of their overall commitment and focus for the actual, you know, really for the overall well-being of your board. Next slide, John. Yeah, okay. Then, if you have a subcommittee, details of all subcommittees and the role of each subcommittee. Again, list the names of the members of subcommittees, the number of meetings that were held, the record of attendance of each subcommittee member. Now, a lot of people just don't like this level of detail regarding their commitment to various organizations, but it is essential because it gives a very good insight into how the organization actually operates. If you know, if there's a high attendance at board meetings and a high attendance by the members of subcommittees, well, then your organization would appear to be working almost at full throttle. Again, provide details of how you manage risk and the conflicts of interest. Managing risk obviously is a key function of the board, and conflicts of interest. There's an emerging practice now that by lots of organizations, that the first thing that happens on the agenda now is that people declare their conflict of interest regarding any particular item on the agenda, and of course that is a very good practice. Any questions? No. Okay. Oh, sorry, there's a question there.
Michael, I think that might be just.
Oh, sorry. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So just asking if anybody does want to put a question into the chat function, feel free to do so, and we can stop you as we go along, Michael, to ask them.
That's okay. Or indeed, if they submit a question later on after the presentation, or if they submit a question tomorrow, you know, as I already said, they can submit it to John at the Donegal Volunteer Centre, or directly to myself at michael@carmichaelireland.ie, and I will give a written response to those questions. It is a practice sometimes that we have that we give indeed that we give a written reply to all questions asked. It's kind of an aftercare. But again, that can depend on time, but I have no difficulty in doing it, I think, on this occasion. Okay, the governance standards then. If your organisation has adopted or is planning on compliance with the charity's governance code, And where are you on that journey in relation to the implementation of our compliance with the Charities Governance Code? Remember that in 2021, there is a requirement that you will have to state that you're compliant with the code. Now, obviously what has happened in 2020 may extend that date, but there is no indication yet that that date is going to be extended. So as of now, it is by 2021, organisations will be required to confirm their compliance with the Charities Governance Code. Or indeed any other code or best practice codes or quality standards, such as the Statement of Guiding Principles on Fundraising. And this should be stated in your annual activity report. If you have done public fundraising, did you comply with the guiding principles of fundraising? And if you did, then that should be stated on your annual report. Perhaps your funders may have other requirements as well, and you should state those. For example, public will have its own requirements, and again, rather than duplicating the work, it might be just a good time to include that in your annual report as well. Just gives out the message that you're compliant with all the standards which you are required to comply with, and be open and as transparent as you possibly can in relation to stating what the position is. Okay, the staffing. I suppose there are paid staff, and again, stating the number of volunteers and what do they do for your organisation. For example, if I walked into your organisation in Donegal Town or Glenties or Ardara or Cartonduna or Bunchan or wherever, and I walk into your reception, and on the notice board I find that you're seeking volunteers. Does it tell me what job I'll be doing when I read the notice board? Does it have an application form attached to it, or do I have to go and ask somebody else, how do I become a volunteer? If I look up your website, does it tell me the number of volunteers that you already have and that you are seeking further volunteers? And is the application form on your website? What support then is provided? Support and guidance is provided if and when I am successful in becoming a volunteer with your organisation. What training will be provided? What are the policies which I have to comply with? And what about my supervision? And again, how do volunteers get involved in your organisation? That's the key and leading question. And any organisation should have that literally up front. How do I get involved as a volunteer? Because remember that volunteers are a special breed of people. They're special people. They're people who through their own commitment and they want to give back to society or to other people in society. Help and they're doing it for free. So they're special people and they're doing it in their own time. So when I apply to become a volunteer, does it tell me the hours I'm going to work, the days that I'm going to be required, my working weekends, etc., and all that? So make it stated clearly. And if you have a very clear and coherent and detailed policy in relation to volunteering, I would put that into the annual report. Again, the employees, of course, are paid staff, and as a paid staff member myself at one stage in my life, you went to work, I suppose, because you were getting paid. Now I do a lot of things on a voluntary basis, but that's by choice. Again, the average number of paid staff should be outlined. The names and job titles of the senior management, for example, who's your CEO or who's your manager? Do you have a deputy manager, or do you have a senior administrator, or whatever? They should be clearly stated. Okay, John. It's just time for a break. Will I keep going, or do you want me to take a little break? Or is there questions? Maybe this is a time for questions.
Yeah, if people want to unmute, or Margaret, do you have any questions that have come through the chat? Just I can't see them with the sharing.
Yeah, no, just one quick one. Back to the number of meetings and attendance of directors. Is there a minimum number of meetings needed to attend, or is this decided by each committee?
Well, no, if you're holding, say, 8 or 9 meetings during the year, and Michael Cook decides to attend 7, or he decides to attend all 8, that shows a high level of commitment and duty of care. Remember when directors sign that B10 to become members of a board, they're declaring, maybe unknowingly sometimes, a high level of a duty of care to the organisation, and it's their duty to attend all meetings, because all board meetings are key meetings. So there is no minimum requirement. But if you're holding 9 meetings, the Michael Cook decides to only attend 2 or 3 meetings, and he did the same last year. What's that saying about Michael Cook as a board member and his commitment to your organisation? Maybe your organisation is being used by Michael Cook because it might be the place to be, as be a member of the local board or whatever in Ardara or Glenties or Buncana or Carmichael. That just might be the place for him to be. It might be a key organisation in the community. But what's his contribution to it? If he's only attending 2 meetings, it would appear to me that that contribution, is very low. The only number you have to be worried about at a meeting, of course, is the quorum. To make sure that whatever your memorandum or article state is your quorum, which is the minimum number that has to be present for any decision to be taken or for the meeting to be held. That's the number that you have to be you have to be most careful with at least. But I'm sure you're aware of that anyway.
There's just one other quick question, and Michael, does this report have to be presented in December, or can it be shared at the AGM, which is our case, which in their case, sorry, apologies, takes place in March?
But we're talking about the 2019 annual report, right?
Yes.
So the 2019 annual report would be, well, let's say in normal times, it would be adopted at this stage at an AGM. Lots of organizations are holding their AGMs via Zoom, and some of them are delaying to see what will happen, later on. But again, the annual report, it's the board's annual report, if I'm reading the question correctly.
Yes.
It's the board annual report, so it has to be approved by the board before it goes in, or before it goes before the AGM, or indeed before it goes into public circulation, because it's the board's annual report. I know that the staff obviously will have a very high level of input, drawing on my own experience from producing annual reports, sometimes, I produced the annual report and I presented it to the board with very little board input. But the annual report will have to be approved by the board before it goes to the AGM of the organisation.
Okay.
Does that answer the question, or have I?
Yeah, that's fine, Michael. There's nothing else in through the chat at the minute.
All right. Okay.
If anyone wants to unmute themselves and put a question directly to Michael, please do feel free to do that.
Or or if they're not brave enough at this stage, you can email it in later, and I will, over the next day or so, I will respond to that. There is no difficulty at all.
Perfect.
Okay, because I find with these presentations where you have a large number, as distinct from a live audience, people are reluctant to submit questions, but when you give them the opportunity to submit them afterwards, you might get 7, 8, 9 questions, and they're key questions really that people need answers to, So I have no difficulty with the aftercare,
That's fantastic, Michael. Thank you. We're as well to carry on. rather than taking the 10-minute break, if that's okay with everybody.
Yeah, okay. There's no problem there. So you want to, if there are no further questions, we'll move it on. Yeah, okay. Now, section 4 dinner, again, the main objectives pursued during the reporting period. What you had planned to achieve for the year in order to achieve your objectives and what was actually achieved over the period. Again, use facts and figures to demonstrate your activities and achievements. Describe what went well. Now, that point stands out there. You should also, talk about what didn't go so well for you, because there is huge learning from failure, and that should be clearly outlined as well. The learning from something if a project fails or whatever. Outline the type and number of products, services, or facilities that result from your activities. Okay, in other words, the output, and what you had planned to do but unable, setting out the reasons why, and the future plans, if any, to complete the projects or initiatives. In other words, what you had planned to achieve for the year in order to achieve your objectives, and what you actually achieved, and the variances. What are the variances, and why didn't certain projects get off the ground? Did a key member of staff leave? Did you get your funding on time? And set it out clearly. If you didn't get your funding on time, state that. That's not a criticism of the actual funder. It's just the way the system operates. And if it operates against you on that particular year, well, then you've got to state that. Describe what went well. Absolutely, we're all very good at stating what went well. But also, you tried some project or you tried some initiative and it failed. What is the learning from that failure? And I put huge emphasis on the learning from failure, because sometimes there is more learning, in failure than there is in anything else. And again, sometimes that learning, is applicable to other organizations in the sector. So if it's contained within your annual report, and other organizations, pick that up and read your annual report, or when your annual report appears on your website. I like reading about when things fail, what is the learning from that failure? Because if when things go well, we're all able to say, we won the match by 10 points or by 7 points or whatever. But when we lose, what was the learning from the loss? Outline the type and number of products, the services or facilities that result from your activities. Yeah, by all means, state exactly what your output and outcomes were, and setting out the reasons why. Again, the reasons why you didn't initiate certain projects that you had intended to do, or that certain projects didn't get completed on time. Set out the reasons why, if it's funding or if it's a key member of staff, it can be leave or whatever. These things happen, but set them out clearly so that people will see that that you have made a determined effort to meet the objectives that you have that you set out for the year. And if you can't meet them in 2019, well, what are your plans then going forward into 2020 and beyond to meet and develop those ideas or projects? Okay, John, if we can. Do you want to move it on, John? Oh, yes, okay. Again, the key achievements and outputs for the reporting period. State what they are. And then your beneficiaries. What feedback do you receive from beneficiaries, funders, supporters, and the wider community? What surveys did you undertake to obtain the feedback? When last did you ask your beneficiaries, or indeed the wider community, what they think of you, or they think of your services, or how your services could be better organized, or what added value can you give perhaps to other services that are being delivered in the community, and perhaps with greater cooperation there will be a greater output. or a greater impact. Again, I think surveys are essential because they're, first of all, they're a communication device with your beneficiaries and with the wider community, in particular, the community that you serve. Did you obtain formal evaluation feedback from participants at events? You know, what assessments did you carry out in any event or any other event or any other occasion that you held? What were the questions that were contained in that evaluation form? Were they, were they appointed? Were they well thought out? And what was the response from the participants? What are they saying to you? And are you going to incorporate some of the points that are being made? Are you going to incorporate those in the next event and into your processes and procedures? Consider including some photos and customer testimonials to provide some flavour for the year. Absolutely, if you can include some photographs of events or indeed some outstanding individuals and customer testimonials, they all add value to your actual, report, because they're local people. People will know them, and people will know their contribution, and indeed the benefits that members of their family or their community received from your organisation. What challenges and difficulties did you face, and how did you address them? What were the challenges that you faced? You possibly knew certain challenges at the beginning of the year, but as the year went by, other challenges and other difficulties were faced. How did you address those? And what was the learning from them? And can that learning be used to ensure that the next time will have a better effect? Is your charity making a permanent difference, not just having a once-off effect? In other words, as I would see it, and I often raise this question with people, did you ever consider what your society would be like in your area if your organisation didn't exist? In other words, did you ever consider writing the obituary, if I can put it like that, of your organisation? If you start writing it from that point, from that viewpoint, you might be pleasantly surprised at what you find out, because it's when something is not available to the society in general, or to your community in general, that its real value then begins to emerge. Particularly, an organisation that has been delivering a service maybe over a period of time, say 5 to 10 years. Okay, John, do you want to move around there if there are no questions? Yeah. Okay. Again, any questions on that? I get lots of questions around the word obituary, but if you look at it, how do you measure the real impact of your organisation on the community? Well, if 2 or 3 people can sit down, maybe from the organisation and then from the greater community, and say, what would this community be like if this organisation did not exist, and no other organisation was providing that service or anything like that? What would the situation be in your community? Because that is the real benefit and the real impact in many ways of your organisation. Okay.
Can I come in with a question there, Michael? John
sure.
Here. I think it's interesting that you point out that the group should highlight the challenges or the failures that they had over the year. I think we're always very nervous to do that because it's what people will fixate on, that, you said you would do X, Y, and Z. But I suppose, yeah, could you reiterate, I suppose, the importance of the learning from not everything's going to go well, and it's important that I suppose we learn from that and that we present that we've learned from that.
A fair point, John, but most people, I think, well, I use the word most maybe a bit loosely, but most people in a community will know about your organization. And if something, if there's a failure within or something fails, it could be a topic of local gossip or whatever, in the wrong sense. And so your annual report is an opportunity, to state the facts. Yes, we had a failing in relation to Project X or whatever it was, and this is the reasons why it failed, and this is the learning from it. And I think there is great learning in failure, because if you never failed, if you haven't got failure in your life at some stage, the quality of the learning may not be what it should be, and you won't be as perhaps as focused as you should be, when you have particular targets and maybe tight deadlines to meet. So I think there is, well, my own personal belief is there is, and I always put huge emphasis on, okay, I'm reading your annual report. It's all about success. You're a very successful organization. Now, can you give me 5 minutes on the failures? And of course, people, as you say, people hide the failures because they don't, I suppose we have a culture in this country where we don't put a lot of emphasis on failure rather than the learning from the failure. Anyway, I have a great belief in learning from the in the failure, because if you're learning from failure, it increases the atmosphere for initiative and freedom of thought and trying new ideas and all that. But otherwise, you're kind of doing the same thing, maybe year in, year out, and not making the progress that you should.
Okay, thank
Michael,
you.
just to jump in on that as well, Michael, very quickly. I saw that with the Ireland funds. Ireland funds are communicated to me around, they place a high degree in trust in organisations who themselves are open to their own criticism, whereas it actually gives you the added benefit too that the rest of your report, the things you talk about, your successes, are more believable by virtue of the fact that you're willing to talk about what didn't go right. And I think for them, that's a big thing, the ability to trust an organisation to give the good, the bad and the ugly for funding. So it has a knock-on effect from a financial perspective as well. There's a positive there.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. Include the good, the bad, and the ugly. I think that's a very good way of putting it. Because you can make the ugly look good too by the learning from it. Anyway, the section 5 then is the income and expenditure. The income received, list the types. Is it a revenue grant or a capital grant, for example? And the source, is it a state agency, the HSE, local authority, government department, the ETB, Hubble, all the sources. The expenditure by type, including details of the petty cash account. State the net position of the organization at the end of the year. The overall accumulated position, the cash reserves or cash on hand. In other words, the overall accumulated position is taking into account the position as at the end of the previous year. So you give the accumulated position of your organization from a financial point of view. If in a deficit, provide a note on how this is being financed. For example, is it being financed by a loan, or has there been other cutbacks or whatever? Provide details of plans to eliminate or reduce deficit over the next few years, if applicable. Again, if there is a deficit, people will need to know how you're going to fund that deficit or how you're going to reduce it over the next few years. Again, I suppose the one thing about income and expenditure is they tell a very good story about your organization, and particularly with the overall accumulated position, because sometimes what you get is the position at the end of a particular year, full stop. You don't get the full story, and sometimes, you know, if there is a deficit coming forward, and you know, you balance the current year, people are inclined to just give the financial position for the current year without actually talking about the deficit, because you know, people don't like to see their organization, I suppose, going into a deficit. But I think that you know, when people come to write the annual report for 2020, I think it will be an entirely different scenario. Okay, can we move it on there a bit, John? Yeah, the sources of income again, you know, for the current year and the previous financial year. Give the comparisons there about the, you know, the various grants, the donations, the fundraising, and the trading activities, and if there are other sources of income like membership fees, etc., and all that, include that as you know, they're just only some of the headings. You know, you will have a multiple of those, I'm sure. And then the next slide. Again, the main expenditure items. Again, the salaries and the wages, including taxes, pension payments, employers, PRSI, etc. Office, the rent, the insurance, a major issue. The lighting and heating, the professional fees, the board committee expenses. You know, costs related to trading or commercial activities, if applicable, and the administration, cost of the administration and other activities. Again, each organization will have their own list of headings and detail. Again, the current financial year versus the previous financial year. And then the net position, is it a surplus or a deficit of funds at the end of the current year? And then in the next slide, you have the balance brought forward in the net position, surplus or deficit funds at the end of the current financial year. You know, 2019 versus 2018. Then the accumulated surplus or deficit for the previous years, what's coming forward. And then the net overall financial position at the end of the current financial year will give you exactly where are we now. And you will have dealt with, if there is a deficit, you will have dealt with that in the narrative, and to set out how you're going to reduce the deficit. What overall factors gave rise to the surplus, which is the accumulated surplus, or the deficit? If this is being explained in detail in the narrative, please reference with regard to the paragraph and page number. It's a very good idea to say, you know, to at this point to say it's on page number, whatever, paragraph, whatever. In other words, make it easy for people to find. Again, it's signed by, usually it's signed by the chairperson and one other member, usually the treasurer of the actual organization. They're signed by two persons of the board of management, usually the chairperson, the treasurer. Where finance statements are prepared by an accounting firm or other person, they should be stated. In other words, if your financial statements, and I'm sure they usually are, produced by auditors, any organization with in excess of 100,000 will need to have an audit, the financial statement produced by an auditor. Name the person as well as the accounting, as well as the firm. The future plans. Provide details of the organization's plans for the coming year and the future years to meet its objectives and support its beneficiaries. You know, what do you want to do? And I suppose, you know, our future plans are, what's the journey been like to date? Where did you come from? Where are you now? And where are you going into the future? And how are you going to get there? What are the steps or the actions that you're going to take to ensure that you're going to reach your objectives? What new initiatives will you undertake, and or what will you do differently? In other words, something failed. What was the learning from that? We're going to do it different next time because it will be more. It will be successful, or indeed it will be more successful. So if you talked about failure earlier on, now is your time to, you know, to talk about the future and how you're going to make that future better from the learning from the failure. Will you provide more services and or new services? In other words, are you going to start providing new services? And if you are, well, then you need to look at your memorandum and articles, because your memorandum and articles perhaps may need to be changed. And again, in relation to the memorandum and articles, if they haven't been reviewed for quite a while, maybe now is the time to review them and update them. And remember that when you update your memorandum and articles now, you've got to submit them to the charity regulator before you refer them to the company's registration office. What new targets? Oh, sorry. That's okay. What new targets or goals are you setting for the coming and future years? In other words, where are we going and how are we going to get there, and what are the plans for the future? Okay, John.
It was too eager the last time.
That's okay. That's okay. Okay. Will there be any changes to who you serve or support? In other words, are you going to broaden your I suppose your support base, or your number of service users? Will you try to increase your volunteers and members of staff? If you're looking for volunteers, then I think your policy needs to be clear and very transparent, so as that if I'm walking the streets and I see your sign in your window or on your reception that you're looking for volunteers, and I walk in, I need to know what it is I'm going to be doing. What is the broad area of work that you want your volunteers for, and all that. And I referenced that before as to who you're going to be reporting to, the hours, the days, am I going to be working weekends or whatever. All that needs to be available. There may be will there be any changes to how you are governed and managed? If there is changes to be made to the governing instrument, well, that needs to be taken care of as well. Is there restructuring in relation to being managed? If you restructure, would it give a better performance, a better outcome? Will you look at how you are funded? In other words, how can you perhaps increase your funding? Can you, for example, engage in fundraising if you haven't done this before? Is that a viable option for you? Will you improve your communication with your beneficiaries and stakeholders? You've got to make sure that the communication with your beneficiaries and your stakeholders is at the maximum level that is effective both for you and for them. And that can only be achieved through real and substantial, communication with your community at local level. Will you improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness, and what steps or actions are to be implemented? Again, what is the learning? What is the learning for the past 12 months? And from that learning, will you become more efficient and more effective in the delivery of your services, etc.? And what are the steps and actions to be implemented? Can they be identified, and are they being implemented? Who's in charge of that implementation? Is there a reporting back, a monitoring and evaluation of the progress being made? What other additional changes do you aim to achieve? Are there other changes that you might like to achieve, but it may take a little while longer, or extra resources to achieve those? Okay, these are just a glossary of keywords, objectives, beneficiaries, outcomes, and outputs. Some people find those very useful because they're words that trip off people's lips, particularly trainers in particular. Objectives, beneficiaries, outcomes, and outputs, and you can read through those in your own time, and come to terms with them. Can we? Yeah. Now the awards for the best annual reports and best governance improvement initiatives. In other words, the Good Governance Awards. They were open since the 2nd of June, and the closing is the 11th of September. There are 6 categories, and there's a new category being introduced this year, and I'm glad to say that I was involved in that initiative, and when the decision was made. That under 50K, it's a new category for organizations, small organizations where the income is less than 50K is a new category. And all the other categories are stated there as well. And the Community Foundation Ireland will award grants of 1,000 to the shortlisted organizations in category 1. That's the under the 50K. And then a further grant of 1,000 will be awarded to the category 1 winner, which is a wonderful prize to get. So the Carmichael are delighted that this initiative has taken place this year. So it adds an opportunity to smaller organizations for the first time to participate in the Good Governance Awards. Okay. Again, the next steps, more information, Carmichael Ireland, obviously.ie, the charity regulator, and the Good Governance Awards itself. You know, there are 3 websites that they have, you know, they have a mountain of information, each of them, and people should access those for any other, you know, detail or guidance. There's excellent guidance documents on the charity regulator's website. There are other documents on the Carmichael Ireland website. So that there is plenty information available from those key sources. Again, Carmichael Ireland is a leading specialist training and support body for non-profits in Ireland, and our training and support and resources enable our members and partners to be more effective and impact in their individual areas. And you know, Carmichael Ireland is only a phone call away, or as somebody said, just a click away. You know, and there is loads of information, and the training department is always available to anybody who has a question that they or an issue that they want to discuss.
Okay, that's the end of the slides, Michael. So I just stop sharing so everybody's kind of back in the room.
Okay. If anybody has any observations to make or any further questions, by all means. That famous expression, now is the time and here is the place.
Right. Can I suppose, just from the perspective of the Volunteer Centre and DLDC and IDP, point out as well, because we're here to, all of those things that came up through Michael's presentation, you know, how to classify, how to recruit volunteers, how to present that information, maybe how to look at the failures and see the positives coming out of them. We're available to support groups to do that. So, you know, if you have a question around volunteering, you come and get in touch with ourselves. If there's training or supports or some just guidance or development question that you may have, you come to DLDC or IDP. You know, we'll be more than happy to chat through that for yourselves as a group and see what supports we could provide beyond. Okay. And Michael, just as well as that, on the Good Governance Awards, yeah, I think they're a fantastic opportunity for groups to learn.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I do. The Volunteer Centre is one of the judging panel representing Donegal, and yeah, even the amount of stuff that we get out of it ourselves, just seeing what other groups are doing, other projects that are going on, and the amount of feedback that is given back to the groups then, and just suggestions around different initiatives or different things they could try to improve the reports. I think it's should your report be at early stages, put it in and get feedback.
Absolutely, yes, okay. And I think that's critical, you know, going forward, where there, you know, there possibly will be a shortage of public monies, and you know, it's looking, you know, government looking for, and government agencies looking for value for money, and you know, your annual report is an ideal platform for you as an opportunity to set out, you know, the impact your organisation makes and how and the value that you're giving for the money that you receive.
A question just in, Michael, asking, can you talk about conflict of interest and volunteers? What if people do not adhere to the duty of care of an organisation?
Well, you see, your duty of you have, if I understand your question, you have a staff handbook. Am I on the right track here? You know, you will have a staff handbook setting out the code of conduct for your staff members. You know, and you remember your volunteer is a staff member once they sign up. Okay, they're a different kind of you know, a different category of staff member, but they're your staff member because you're responsible for them. Are you talking about the duty of care then of the volunteer? Is that what we're, or have I?
As taken from the question that the volunteer possibly is not adhering to the duty of care of the organisation.
Oh, right. Okay. Well, then that's a matter initially for their supervisor, you know, to obviously to explain again, you know, their role and their commitment and what that duty of care actually means, you know, like respect, integrity, you know, friendliness and all that is a key part of being a volunteer. And it's no different from being a member of staff, you know. And the same, you know, the same requirements on a staff member should really apply to a volunteer. And if their conduct is not up to standard, well, you know, they should be told that in advance of coming in. Like somebody should have, you know, somebody from your dealing with your HR should have said, you know, we welcome you with open arms, but coming in here, this is the way you conduct yourself. These are the rules. You know, we'll expect maybe a 2 or 3 month probationary period or whatever, a settling in period, getting used to us, getting used to our ethos in here. And then beyond that, then you know, under I suppose under permanent supervision, the person should be guided and you know, through good leadership internally. If there are difficulties, well, then they have to be dealt with in the same way as you would deal with a member of staff that would produce the same difficulty. Because you cannot deal with a volunteer differently than you would deal with a staff, you know, a staff member. Because I take it your HR policies would set that out clearly in any event.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does, Michael. Yes, thank you.
It's up to the, you know, it's up to the manager or the supervisor and the manager, you know, to, you know, to manage the staff. I mean, that's what management is. It's like, Michael, how do you deal with a difficult board member? Well, that's up to the board to deal with a difficult board member. And there's, you know, there's a code of conduct around that, and there's a duty of care around it. And if somebody isn't, you know, if somebody isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, or if they've reached confidentiality or whatever, well, they're serious matters and there should be consequences for that. But those consequences should be clearly spelled out beforehand. In other words, if I was signing up for a volunteer, obviously confidentiality is like a member of staff, is a key requirement. Well, if I go out into the community and I breach that confidentiality, well, I know that when I breach it, there's a consequence for me. You know, so it is important that the consequential of conduct which is not conforming to the ethos and standard of your organisation is set out clearly for people beforehand. You know.
Exactly. Yes. And Michael, thank you. We don't have any other questions in through the chat, so maybe we'll just give an opportunity to everybody in the room to.
Oh, no hurry. I'm
mute if they have anything further to add before we.
Karen wants to come in there.
Yes. Hi, everybody. Michael, I thought the obituary.
You're muted again, Karen. Sorry. You're muted. No.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what's going on with my computer here. I just thought the obituary was really a useful, quite a strong message maybe to give, but a really useful one to think about for groups.
Yeah, exactly, because you know it's when you sit down with the members of your board or your staff and members of the community that are the beneficiaries of that organisation, and maybe people who are not beneficiaries of your organisation, and look at your society and the community that you service, and say to yourself, well, what would it be like if we didn't exist? You'll be surprised what you might find. But you know, it's an exercise that's well worth conducting over a period of time, you know.
Absolutely. I think the concept of the good, the bad, and the ugly, I think that reflects well, I suppose, laying
Yeah,
bare.
yeah. And I think for all of us who have, 100% of the population, what we have experienced since the end of February, early March, in this pandemic, I think, when things get maybe back into the new normal, let's take all the learning from that. And I think there'll be huge learning for lots and lots of people. Particularly, I think that people in the community and voluntary sector who already have making a huge, huge contribution. I even see it here. I live here in Clane and County Kildare, and I see the contribution that has been made. It's just colossal,
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, the value, of the community and voluntary sector really has come to the fore through the COVID-19, without a doubt. I mean, they were the first to mobilise, and they're still there working through it, and now the challenges of reopening and all that comes with it. I mean, it really is remarkable. I don't think there's anything else coming through, Michael. So if there's nothing else, we'll close for today. But it is good to have that opportunity to email you directly after with any additional questions.
Sure.
And I suppose just to thank everybody for coming along to the session today. Hopefully it was beneficial. And just to reiterate what John has said, if anyone wants any support with any part of their annual plan, do come back to ourselves, DLDC or IDP, through Karen, myself, or John Logue at any point. And obviously John and the Volunteer Centre, we're more than happy to help. With the invitation to this session, there was a survey, or a link to a survey, I suppose, and that just helps us ensure that we're delivering training, that is of benefit and is needed. So if anybody hasn't, or, for those that haven't maybe completed that survey, we would ask you to do so. It just, as I say, it helps us to plan ahead with training. But other than that, sorry, you were coming, Michael?
Yeah, also the evaluation form for Carmichael. I'd be referring that back when I receive it. I'd be referring it back to Carmichael. It's an indication, I suppose, or an evaluation of my performance today.
Yes. We'll follow up with that as well.
That's important. That's very important as well.
We'll reissue that after today's session and ask people to come back with it as well. Absolutely, yes. So thank you all very much for attending, and Michael, thank you, and that was very helpful, very beneficial.
Right. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
We're rerunning this session at 7 o'clock if anybody wants to come again. All right. Thank you.
Okay, John. Thank you very much.
Bye.